Welcome to the Mental Militia, uniting minds and freeing souls from the bonds of mental slavery and ruling class manipulation.
So why should you bother to listen to what I have to say? What qualifies me as a teacher of technical information, of computing information and techniques? So I'm going to go through a brief history of my background in the whole tech world. The first job I ever got in the tech world was actually at a strip club. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people may find that pretty funny. When I was first starting out learning about computers and the web had just basically come around, it was this new thing, and people were still dialing in on modems and crap like that. I started learning how web pages worked just by looking at the code, downloading the code of the page, looking at it, learning HTML, went out and bought a book on HTML. And I got a job at a strip club in southern New Jersey, South Jersey, just outside of Runnymede. I'm trying to think of the name of the township. I think it's Audubon Township. The parent company was called IMI Network. This is the first tech job I had. Obviously, I had other jobs before that, but the first tech job was basically I acted as an image processor of the photos that they took of the dancers, and I had to optimize all the images for the web. And then I built small thumbnail galleries for their website. And I also helped with setup, although the senior programmers and web guys did most of that. I helped with the setup of, they actually had like stage cams and things like that in the place. So it was a pretty seedy job. I mean, it was a pretty seedy place. The job wasn't that seedy, but it was a pretty seedy place, not run by the most savory of characters. But I guess you wouldn't expect that from a strip joint, but it was cutting edge stuff for the time. And again, not necessarily positive or as seedy as it may be, it's the fact of the matter truth that the porn industry, unfortunately, has driven technology and pushed it forward in many, many, many ways, believe it or not. They're often some of the most cutting edge because they're trying to make money through selling sex, and they're constantly pushing the envelope of technologies and creating new things. And this was cutting edge for the time that I worked there in the mid 90s. It was probably 95 or 96 at the latest. I was going to say 95 maybe. They were doing cutting edge stuff for as early in the internet era as it was. So I learned a huge amount, and talking to the programmers, talking to the web guys, really learned a lot. I moved on after that because I met an artist there who saw what I was doing, because he was actually building a website. He was acting as an affiliate with them because he needed extra money, because he was trying to start his own business, which was called MediaCraft Incorporated in Burlington County, New Jersey. And this gentleman, during meetings at IMI Network that I was privy to, offered me a job at MediaCraft. This was the best job I think I ever had in my life. We worked in a scenic hillside environment, a loft-like environment, but it was on the ground floor, and it had like 12-foot high glass windows overlooking like a meadow, hillside, beautiful green grass. It was unbelievable. The space was just awesome. And our main client that we worked for was Burlington County Community College. We built their first iteration of their website and maintained it for the time that I was with MediaCraft. So I gained a lot of web and graphics experience there as well. The head of MediaCraft was headhunted. For people who don't know what that is, it's like people in larger corporations will send people out to find skilled workers for what they need and offer them more money than what they're getting at their current position. And that's what happened with the CEO, or just the guy who ran MediaCraft. He was headhunted by Knight Ridder, which is a parent company of just about most of the newspapers in the United States, specifically the parent company of the Philadelphia Inquirer. When my boss at MediaCraft was headhunted. The company basically closed down because he was the main guy behind it, and he was the guy who was really running the business. So I was out of a job for a small amount of time, but then he brought me over to Night Ritter with him. So he hooked up an interview for me. He said, "This will be cake. I'm going to vouch for you. I know you're good at what you do." And he got me into the Philadelphia Inquirer very quickly. There, I basically created newspaper ads up through like, quarter to half to even whole page ads for the Philadelphia Inquirer for a time. I call this my Ministry of Truth years. I actually worked in the Ministry of Truth in Philadelphia, which I'm not very proud of these days, but again, gained a lot of experience on how things worked in the tech world. The Inquirer branched off a whole section of people from the building that they operated out of in Philadelphia and went into a new, very modern loft technology building. And that's where they operated their Philly.com division. I was offered a position to go to the internet division and work as a web graphics designer. I took that and I worked at Philly.com for a couple of years. I made internet ads, from the old web days where, banners at the top of the page, but little buttons on the side, animated GIF files, flash. We did flash banners and stuff like that. So I made all of the advertising graphics. I was one of the main graphic designers for advertising for the Philly.com website for a couple of years. After that, this job gave me the most experience that I gained ever at Philly.com and the Philadelphia Inquirer job to a certain extent. Gave me the most experience in technical troubleshooting, both at the Inquirer building and the Philly.com building. They had terrible technical staffs, I'd have to say. A couple of the guys were okay, but most of them really were very, very mediocre troubleshooters. And if problems happened on these design computers that we were working on, and the design team didn't know how to fix them, the tech problems, we would have to call the tech staff, and they'd come up and they'd just take forever. Machines would be down constantly. It was just a total, really bad environment for troubleshooting. When I worked at Philly.com, I had such talented graphics people that were my bosses and over me that I would just be like, okay, I got my stuff done for the day. I want to stay and watch you work. That's how good these guys were. It's one of the ways I learned Photoshop, just observing what these masters with Photoshop were doing. And I would just watch them and watch, how did you go to that? What menu did you hit there? What button did you hit? And they were very patient with me. And I would just sit next to them and watch them and ask questions. And that's the best way of learning. Deep observation, then attempting to mimic it on your own later. And if you are in a position to ask questions, then you do that. And that's where I gained a lot of graphics knowledge. But then, what I was doing the whole time I was in these two positions is I was myself aggregating knowledge about how to do troubleshooting, because their troubleshooting staffs were very mediocre at best. So a lot of the troubleshooting fell to me. And I was starting to find I was getting so good with troubleshooting technical problems that I could solve the problems faster than the tech staffs could at these places. And so sometimes I wouldn't even put in a ticket for something broken. I would just fix it. And then the rest of the staff was like, "Oh, you fixed that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm getting pretty good at troubleshooting." So I really got a lot better at troubleshooting after I left this job on my own. After I left Philly.com, I started really becoming a tech guy. Okay, not just learning media creation or graphics manipulation, but really getting into deep understanding of how computing systems work and like repair, but specifically repair work with software. I wouldn't say I'm a big hardware repair guy, although I know how to do a little bit of that. I am a software troubleshooter to a high degree of talent and specialization. And when I decided I want to start to branch out and get a job in actual troubleshooting and tech, I landed a job at Gear 3 Technologies. They're no longer around. They used to operate in the Princeton area of New Jersey, and they service the whole New Jersey area, generally all the way up to New York, and even in Philly a little bit, and as far south as Atlantic City. When I was working as in Gear 3, I was their lead Macintosh technical specialist, which basically means if anybody had a problem at one of the companies who they had contracts for, that used Macintoshes or Macs to do their work, I was the guy who was sent on the remote job. And I troubleshot a lot of graphics computers for a lot of different businesses. Specifically, I did a lot of work in Atlantic City at Trump Tower, troubleshooting in their graphics department. I did jobs for the city of Atlantic City in their municipal building. And I also troubleshot the whole graphics department for Atlantic City Slot and Coin, that are the makers of the Atlantic City slot machines for almost all of the casinos there. And they're based in Pleasantville, New Jersey, just outside of Atlantic City. So, and I went to many, many, many different places as well as the Macintosh specialist for Gear 3. After I left Gear 3, I wanted a job with better benefits at the time, and I put in a application for a position in the School of Medicine Information Services Department of the University of Pennsylvania. Here, I got a job as a tech head of a few different departments in their School of Medicine, which meant that I was responsible for the upkeep and maintenance and troubleshooting of all of the computers in the department. I probably serviced at least 250 computers in my departments, at least, while I was at that job. Eventually, I left that job because they basically weren't hiring new people after people were leaving, and they were dumping their workload on the existing staff with no pay increase. And, it's like, hey, I'm not going to be a work mule for, not getting a commensurate raise in pay. And so I left. But that is my technical background. And after I left that job is when I started What on Earth is Happening in earnest. And, the rest is history. But that's my technical background, and that's what qualifies me to lead this seminar. A lot of know-how and skill sets went into all of those jobs. And you know what? Every one of those jobs prepared me for what I do now. Every single one. Every skill set that I learned at every one of those jobs prepared me for doing the type of work that I do now at What on Earth is Happening. Without any one of those, I may not be as good at what I do. I may not be able to do this as effectively. So that concludes the background.